Far beyond the boundaries of ordinary landscapes, scattered across the globe like whispers of another realm, lie places so surreal, so hauntingly beautiful, they defy belief. These are not the destinations found in travel brochures or charted neatly on tourist maps. They are the world's hidden sanctuaries, geological miracles, and spiritual frontiers where nature and myth intertwine. In this journey, we venture deep into the planet's most unreal places. Towering sandstone pillars that rise like frozen lightning, mist-shrouded forests where time stands still, alpine peaks that pierce the sky, and sacred mountains where centuries of prayers still echo through the wind. Each location unfolds not as a simple point on a map, but as a living story etched into the earth itself, rich with legend, layered in history, and shaped by the awe-inspiring forces of time and nature. This is not just a tour of landscapes, it's a journey into the extraordinary. But before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video. High above the great sweep of the Tibetan Plateau, where the air grows so thin it steals the breath and the world itself seems carved from the bones of the gods, rises the northern face of Mount Wulingyuan, known to much of the world as Mount Everest. But here, on the Chinese side, in the remote wilderness of Tibet, the mountain reveals a stark and more severe character than the verdant and busier southern face approached from Nepal. The north face of Wulingyuan is not softened by monsoon-fed greenery or base camp tourism in quite the same way. Here, the landscape is a domain of stone and wind, a place where the terrain feels ancient and indifferent, where glacier cleave the mountains like frozen rivers suspended in time, and the highland air is so cold and dry it desiccates the bones of the dead before scavengers ever arrive. The journey to this face of the world's tallest mountain begins not with lush valleys but with wind-scoured highlands that feel more like a forgotten planet than a part of Earth. Settlements like Old Tingri or the Tibetan village of Rongbuk appear like huddled clusters of resistance against the cold, and beyond them lies the famed Rongbuk Monastery, one of the highest temples in the world, its whitewashed walls gazing across the emptiness at Everest's immense shadow. There is something deeply spiritual about this face of the mountain, perhaps even more so than the commercial routes taken from Nepal. It seems less about conquest and more about reverence. From here, Wulingyuan is not just a summit but a presence. The north face rises in a forbidding, almost vertical series of jagged buttresses and icefalls that seem carved not by erosion but by some celestial chisel. The glacier here, the East Rongbuk Glacier especially, are vast, slow-moving cathedrals of ice. They groan and crack and sparkle beneath the unforgiving sun. Few who have stood at the base of this face would ever describe it as merely beautiful. It is too raw for that. It is sublime in the truest sense of the word, awe-inspiring and terrifying all at once. In Tibetan culture, the mountain is more than a geological colossus. Wulingyuan means goddess mother of the world, and she is revered not just as a physical giant but as a spirit unto herself. Climbers who attempt the North Col route from the Chinese side must face an entirely different set of challenges than those on the south. The ascent is steeper, colder, and more exposed to brutal high-altitude winds that sweep in from the interior of Asia. The camps, Intermediate Camp and Advanced Base Camp, are barren, stone-filled flats in a vast, freezing purgatory of altitude and exhaustion. Even without summiting, standing in the shadows of this frozen monarch reshapes a person. The silence here is complete, the wind howling not through trees but across ice and rock. The stars at night appear close enough to touch, and during the day, the blue of the sky feels thinner, sharper, unprotected. Yet even here, in this harsh realm, life persists. Tibetan antelope occasionally roam the distant ridges, and solitary birds glide on thermals that rise from the canyon floors. Buddhist prayer flags snap and flutter in the wind, their colors faded, their messages carried on the breeze toward the peak in a symbolic act of spiritual ascent. It is no wonder that this side of Wulingyuan, less photographed, less publicized, retains a mythical presence. It remains a testing ground not just of human endurance, but of humility. Where the southern routes have become icons of bucket list tourism, the northern face still demands quiet submission and deep respect. The sheer solitude of the region, the unrelenting majesty of the glacier, and the towering presence of the mountain all conspire to remind us of our insignificance in the face of nature's true giants. No photograph, no documentary, no written word can prepare one for the feeling of standing beneath that wall of ice and stone, knowing that above you, somewhere in the frozen silence, lies the very rooftop of Earth. Far to the south of the Tibetan highlands, the landscape of China transforms into a subtropical wonderland, lush, mist-veiled, and bursting with life. Here in Guangdong province, Nestled amid dense forests and ancient cultural sites, rises Mount Lianhua, or Lianhuashan, literally Lotus Flower Mountain. In stark contrast to the glacial austerity of Komolangma, Mount Lianhua exudes softness and vitality. Yet its beauty is no less surreal. It emerges from the subtropical vegetation like a stone lotus blooming upward, its granite petals towering in smooth, rounded forms that catch the light in ways that make the mountain appear alive, breathing, shifting. Mount Lianhua is revered not just for its shape but for the harmonious balance it strikes between natural grandeur and cultural legacy. From a distance, the mountain's silhouette resembles an unfolding lotus blossom, a sacred flower in both Buddhism and Chinese philosophy. The symbolism is not lost on those who come here: pilgrims, hikers, mystics, and tourists alike. The mountain appears as though grown by the earth itself in a meditative pose, its jagged rocks and rounded granite domes forming the natural mandala of a landscape built for reflection. The air here is thick with the scent of moist foliage, and the forests that carpet Lianhuashan's lower slopes are rich in life. Giant camphor trees, subtropical bamboo, and rare flowering plants mingle in dense, layered canopies. Mornings are often marked by a drifting veil of mist that creeps upward from the valleys, wrapping the forest in an ethereal gauze. The trails, ancient and winding, follow stone steps carved long ago, leading through groves where sunlight filters like molten gold through emerald leaves. These trails ascend not in straight lines but in a meandering, poetic rhythm, as if the mountain itself refuses to be rushed. What makes Mount Lianhua especially unreal is how its rock formations seem almost deliberate, as if carved by some celestial artisan. The granite surfaces are smooth and pale, weathered by centuries of subtropical rain, wind, and heat. Towering monoliths rise from the forest like petrified gods, while smaller outcrops appear sculpted into poetic forms, some resembling dragons, others waterfalls or reclining sages. These rock forms have inspired local folklore for centuries. According to legend, the mountain was once a divine lotus that descended from the heavens, frozen into stone to anchor the chaotic energies of the southern provinces. Interwoven into this natural sculpture garden are temples, shrines, and altars. Some date back hundreds of years, their foundations rooted in Taoist, Buddhist, and local folk traditions. The most well-known among them is the Lotus Temple, perched on a granite ledge high above the forest floor, its red and gold roof visible through the mist like a flickering flame. The temple walls are decorated with faded murals depicting lotus flowers in every stage of bloom, as well as stories of hermits who sought enlightenment on these slopes. Offerings of incense and fruit are placed on ancient stone altars, and the air is often filled with the rhythmic chanting of monks or the solitary sound of a bell carried by wind across the valley. One of the most breathtaking features of Mount Lianhua is the panoramic view from its summit. After climbing through cool forests and along narrow ridgelines, one emerges above the trees onto a platform of smooth granite that seems to hover in the sky. From here, the subtropical landscape unfurls in every direction: rolling hills, glinting rivers, and the distant silhouette of villages nestled in green basins. When the air is clear, you can see all the way to the Pearl River Delta, a shimmer of water and civilization framed by the gentle arc of the southern horizon. But it is the cloud seas that most often steal the breath of those who visit. When the conditions are right, the mountain appears to rise above a vast ocean of mist, with only the tallest peaks and temples poking through. It's a vision straight out of a Chinese ink painting, timeless, minimal, and impossibly serene. In those moments, as silence blankets the summit and the wind sighs softly through the pines, Mount Lianhua becomes something more than a place. It becomes a vision of transcendence, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Lianhuashan is not among China's tallest or most famous peaks, but its essence lingers with those who tread its paths. It does not demand reverence through height or danger, but invites contemplation through grace and symbolism. In its curves and clouds, in its stone and silence, it speaks of harmony between human and nature, earth and sky, body and spirit. And in that balance, it earns its place among the unreal wonders of our world. Further north, where the rugged hills of Lianing province rise like sentinels above the Yellow Sea, Mount Dahe, known locally as Daheishan, emerges as a striking contrast to the southern subtropical peaks. Though not among China's tallest mountains, Daheishan holds a unique status as the highest peak in the Dalian region, offering a rare and surreal combination of maritime vistas, rich biodiversity, and sculpted cliffs that cascade toward the sea. It is a place where land and ocean embrace, and where each sunrise floods stone ridges with golden light that seems drawn straight from the myths of an older world. Mount Dahe rises to a modest but proud elevation of just over 700 meters, but elevation alone does not define its majesty. What makes this mountain truly unreal is the sheer drama of its topography. Craggy granite ridgelines jut into the sky like the shattered remains of ancient titans, worn by time but still imposing. The cliffs here are sheer and bold, resembling waves frozen in stone. Some formations appear to be poised mid-collapse, yet have stood unchanged for centuries, creating a landscape of frozen dynamism that feels carved by both tectonics and time's slow patience. The vegetation that cloaks Dahe adds to this dreamlike contrast. Here, the north's temperate forests flourish. Thick clusters of pine and oak intermingle with flowering shrubs and wild grasses that sway in the sea breeze. In spring, the lower slopes burst into bloom with rhododendrons and cherry blossoms, lending the air a delicate perfume. In autumn, the forest ignites in golds and reds, and the mountain becomes a canvas of flame beneath the cool blue sky. It is this seasonal transformation, combined with the proximity to the sea, that gives Dahe a layered and changeable beauty. The coastal proximity creates moments of striking surrealism. From many points along the higher ridges, one can look out and see the curve of the yellow sea stretching endlessly into the haze, its surface catching the sun like molten silver. On particularly clear days, the outlines of Dalian's urban skyline are visible in the distance, buildings gleaming faintly on the horizon like distant fortresses. The juxtaposition of city and wilderness, cliff and sea, is deeply poetic. When clouds roll in from the ocean, they often hug the mountain's middle slopes, leaving the summit above a sea of mist, isolated like an island in the sky. Mount Dahe is not merely a natural marvel, it is also steeped in spiritual and historical significance. For centuries, local monks and hermits sought refuge here, believing that the mountain's windswept peaks were closer to enlightenment. Temples, some ancient and crumbling, others lovingly maintained, are scattered across its flanks. One of the most revered is the Dahe Temple, an expansive complex that has stood for over 1,000 years. It clings to a rocky outcrop near the summit, its golden roof tiles shining under the sun, a beacon of faith perched between heaven and earth. Within the temple grounds, the soundscape shifts. The crash of sea waves below gives way to the rhythmic chime of temple bells and the gentle rustle of robes. Incense curls lazily toward the sky, carried on salty breezes, and monks move through the halls in quiet contemplation. It is not uncommon for hikers to pause here not just to rest, but to reflect, to listen to the silence of the stones and the echoes of prayers whispered into mountain winds. Dahe also offers a variety of winding trails, some gentle and meandering, others steep and carved into cliff faces. Popular among both local adventurers and visiting travelers, these trails are more than just physical paths. They are timelines, taking one past old fortress ruins, weathered stone pagodas, and ancient inscriptions etched into the rocks by travelers long gone. These relics of history are not cordoned off or put behind glass. They are part of the living mountain, encountered in the middle of a forest or at the crest of a wind-battered peak. At sunrise, Dahe is transformed into a world of molten fire. The sky, often streaked with hues of orange, rose, and violet, becomes a dome of light over the cliffs. The sea below catches this light and reflects it back with subtle distortion, and the whole landscape seems to shimmer in a moment that feels suspended between night and day, dream and reality. The gulls cry below, circling above the water, and for a few heartbeats, it is easy to believe that this is not just a mountain, but a place lifted from legend. In winter, the mountain takes on a quieter, sterner beauty. Snow dusts the peaks and ridges, clinging to pine needles and blanketing the stone with silence. The trails become quieter, the forest animals scarce, and the cliffs loom all the more dramatically under the pale northern sun. Even the sea below turns steely and reflective, a shifting mirror to the sky's moods. Mount Dahe may not boast the fame of Everest or the mysticism of Taoist holy peaks, but in its balance of ocean and mountain, serenity and wildness, it claims a rare and unreal kind of majesty. It is a place where boundaries dissolve, between land and water, earth and sky, history and myth, and where every path leads not just upward, but inward. In the heart of Fujian province, where rolling hills dissolve into misty tea valleys and stone paths wind like calligraphy through forests of bamboo and laurel, rises a peculiar and almost whimsical mountain, Mount Mopan, or Mopanshan. Unlike the jagged peaks of the west or the granite ridges of the south, this mountain carries a form so curious, so striking in its quiet oddity, that it has captured local imagination for centuries. Its summit is smooth and perfectly rounded, shaped not into spires or knives, but like a colossal stone millstone, broad, flat, and circular, resting on the landscape as if left behind by some forgotten titan's labor. The name Mopen translates directly to millstone, and the resemblance is more than metaphorical. From afar, the mountain's profile appears almost too perfect, like a dome-shaped relic carved by intention rather than erosion. Unlike many Chinese peaks that rise with vertical drama, Mount Mopen ascends with a gentle sweep, like a slow, ceremonial bow to the sky. Yet for all its softness in form, the mountain holds a presence that is deeply mystic, wrapped in vapor and silence, as if guarding secrets too old to be spoken aloud. The trails that lead toward Mopen's summit are soaked in moisture for much of the year. Fujian's humid subtropical climate bathes the landscape in frequent mist and gentle rains, especially in spring and early summer. This persistent moisture nourishes a blanket of green that creeps over everything: ferns, mosses, lichens, and vines, so that even the ancient stone steps seem to emerge organically from the earth. Walking these paths feels like moving through a dream suspended in time. The air is thick with petrichor and the distant chirping of tree frogs. Bamboo groves clack softly in the breeze, and the trail narrows between curved trunks and slippery rocks, each bend revealing a new composition of mist, forest, and stone. What truly defines Mount Mopen, beyond its distinctive form, is the serene fusion of nature and spirituality woven into its slopes. Long regarded as a sacred site in local Buddhist tradition, the mountain houses several ancient temples tucked into its folds like whispered prayers left on the lips of the land. Among these, the most revered is Yunchi Temple, Cloud Rest Temple, named not only for its literal elevation among the clouds, but for its metaphysical role as a place of stillness, where mind and body come to rest in the sky's embrace. The temple complex is modest but profound. Built into terraces on the mountain's middle slope, its structures blend seamlessly into the surrounding forest. Roofs of curved black tile mirror the shapes of the surrounding leaves, and the walls, faded red and ochre, bear the marks of centuries of rain and incense smoke. Bronze bells hang beneath the eaves, ringing softly with each gust of wind. Monks clad in saffron robes walk silently between the halls, sometimes tending small gardens of lotus and tea, sometimes sitting in zazen beneath ancient trees that drip with moisture and moss. Pilgrims arrive here not in crowds, but in quiet succession, some carrying incense, others simply seeking the gentle detachment the mountain offers. There is a legend told by the temple caretakers, passed down through generations, that the shape of Mount Mopen was no accident. According to this tale, the mountain was once the millstone of a celestial farmer, used to grind the stars into seeds of wisdom. When the heavens no longer needed this task, the millstone was placed gently upon the earth as a gift, where it would remain, timeless and still, drawing seekers toward its serenity. Whether metaphor or myth, the story feels oddly appropriate. There is indeed a grinding away of worldly concerns here, a refinement of thought and self that comes not from intensity, but from stillness. Climbing higher toward the summit, the terrain shifts subtly. The trees grow shorter, and the moss-covered stones begin to flatten into wide, rounded slabs. The path grows quieter, no birdsong, no footsteps, only the gentle sound of fog rolling across stone. And then, quite suddenly, one emerges onto the summit, a nearly circular plateau of weather-smoothed rock that crowns the mountain like the surface of a millstone. Standing there, the world falls away. Clouds cling to the slopes below, swirling like milk poured into tea, and distant peaks rise as blue silhouettes in the mist. The air is utterly clean, untouched. It feels as though time itself slows in respect. At certain times of the year, especially during autumn mornings, the mountain hosts a phenomenon locals call Yun Hai, or Cloud Sea. From the summit, the view is nothing short of otherworldly. A thick, soft layer of cloud fills the valleys below, stretching endlessly outward, with only the rounded top of Mopen and a few nearby peaks visible above. In those moments, the millstone summit becomes an island in a celestial ocean. Many monks have called these mornings the purest form of meditation, a place not just above the world, but gently apart from it. In the surrounding forests, ancient steles mark forgotten graves of monks who chose to spend their last years in seclusion on Mopen's slopes. Small shrines dot the hillside, often dedicated to Avalokiteshvara or local guardian spirits. The people of Fujian have long treated the mountain with a kind of quiet reverence, not dramatic, not showy, but deeply woven into the rhythm of their cultural and spiritual lives. Farmers still climb the lower slopes to offer prayers for good harvests. Tea pickers leave tokens beneath sacred trees. Children learn stories of the mountain not from books, but from elders whose memories are laced with fog and incense. What makes Mount Wulingyuan an unreal place is not spectacle but subtlety. It does not overwhelm with grandeur. It reveals its otherworldliness slowly, through mist, sound, and silence. It is a mountain that doesn't seek to impress, but to soothe, to offer, in its smooth summit and ancient temples, a kind of timeless balm. In a world that spins faster every day, Mount Wulingyuan remains still, a sacred millstone, grinding the noise of the world into wisdom, patience, and peace. Rising from the green heart of Hunan province, in the subtropical embrace of Zhangjiajie, is a landscape so surreal, so unearthly, that it has become a symbol of otherworldly beauty, not just in China, but across the entire planet. Mount Wulingyuan, more accurately described as a vast mountainous region composed of thousands of sandstone pillars and deep ravines, stands as one of Earth's most mind-bending and visually arresting natural formations. Its signature spires, narrow, vertical stone towers, pierce the mist-laden sky like fingers of a sleeping god trying to touch the heavens. It is here, in this dramatic and dreamlike terrain, that the 2009 film Avatar found its muse. The floating Hallelujah Mountains of Pandora, with their gravity-defying cliffs and drifting islands in the sky, drew direct inspiration from Wulingyuan's dizzying heights. And yet, no CGI or cinematic reimagining could ever fully replicate the raw, uncanny majesty of this place. Mount Wulingyuan is not a fantasy invented for the screen. It is real, and it is older than myth itself. Spanning over 260 square kilometers, the Wulingyuan Scenic Area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and contains over 3,000 quartz sandstone pillars and peaks, some rising more than 200 meters into the air. These pillars were formed over millions of years through a perfect storm of geological forces, erosion, frost, and the movement of subterranean water. Unlike other mountains that gradually taper or swell into rolling hills, the formations of Wulingyuan rise vertically, narrow and sheer, often separated by plunging ravines filled with streams, waterfalls, and dense, untamed forest. The site is disorienting in the best way possible. From the famed Qingcheng mountain viewpoint, especially on a misty morning, one looks out across a horizon littered with towering spires, each seemingly suspended in the air, detached from the earth. The mist flows between them like a ghostly tide, swallowing the valley floors and revealing only the tips of the peaks, giving the impression of a floating world untethered to physical laws. It's easy to understand how ancient legends took root here, how people believed that immortals lived atop these lonely towers, practicing alchemy in the clouds. Despite the drama of its landscape, Wulingyuan is not a barren realm. Life clings with fierce tenacity to even the narrowest ledges. Pine trees, some bent and gnarled by age, cling to cliff edges where no soil should be, their roots gripping rock as if in defiance of gravity itself. Birds swoop between the pillars, their songs echoing upward like prayers. The forest floor below is a riot of green, ferns, mosses, and flowering shrubs bursting from every available niche. Waterfalls tumble from hidden springs, carving vertical streams down into crystalline pools. In spring, the entire area glows with bloom and color, while in autumn, fiery foliage drapes the spires in brilliant red and gold. Among the most iconic of Wulingyuan's features is the so-called Hallelujah Mountain, formerly known as the Southern Sky Column. After the release of Avatar, Chinese authorities renamed it in honor of the film's fantasy world, cementing the connection between this ethereal place and the idea of floating mountains. Standing at its base or looking down from its summit, it's hard to argue the decision. The illusion of floating is more than convincing. It is real in the visual language of the landscape. The narrow bases of the pillars, often obscured by mist and distant forest, give the tops the appearance of being unanchored, drifting in silent defiance of the laws of Earth. But there is more here than just geology and spectacle. The region is steeped in cultural resonance. For centuries, local Tujia and Miao ethnic communities have lived in harmony with this environment, passing down stories that reflect its uncanny beauty. One legend tells of a young warrior who, upon dying in battle, was turned into one of the stone pillars by the gods, so that he could forever watch over his homeland. Others speak of dragons that once roamed the mountains, their long bodies carving the valleys and their breath summoning the ever-present mist. Even the most skeptical visitor feels a brush of myth when walking among these cliffs. It's a place where belief feels not just plausible, but necessary. Modern infrastructure has made Wulingyuan more accessible, but the region has retained its mystique. Glass elevators, like the towering Bailong elevator, the tallest outdoor lift in the world, transport visitors from valley floor to mountaintop, allowing for staggering aerial perspectives that seem more like dreams than real places. Skywalks and narrow stone bridges cling to the edges of cliffs, providing vistas that make even the steadiest legs tremble. These platforms offer glimpses into a vertical world where depth perception fails, and the eye can scarcely process the magnitude of the space around it. One could spend weeks exploring the various pockets of Wulingyuan, Yellowstone Village, Yuanjiji, Chenzi Mountain, and never grow accustomed to its strangeness. Every turn reveals a new formation, a new angle, a new illusion. The light changes everything. At dawn, the pillars glow gold. At dusk, they recede into violet shadows. During rain, they vanish entirely, leaving only the whisper of water and the rustle of wind. It is a place in constant transformation, where nature is both architect and storyteller. Yet for all its vertical glory and cinematic fame, the true power of Mount Wulingyuan lies in the emotions it stirs. It is not just a sight to behold but a presence to be felt, a place that presses into memory like a deep dream. In its silence and its spires, in its fog and its forests, it reminds us of something elemental, that there are still places on earth that defy explanation, that hold mystery like a chalice, and that whisper back to us that we are not the first, nor the last, to stand in awe of their unreal beauty. Deep within the rolling green folds of Guizhou province, an area of remote plateaus, deep gorges, and perpetually shrouded mountain mist, rises a mountain that hums not only with natural wonder but with mythic resonance. This is Mount Leigong, or Leigongshan, Thunder God Mountain, a peak less known to the world than some of its more dramatic siblings, yet one that holds a sacred pulse, beating through centuries of indigenous reverence, ecological richness, and the whispered stories of the sky. It is a place where thunder is not merely weather, but a message, where lightning is not just a flash, but the flick of a divine whip cracking across the heavens. At just under 2,200 meters, Mount Leigong is the highest peak in the Miaoling Range, and while it does not boast the vertical theatrics of sandstone pillars or snow-draped summits, its power lies in atmosphere. The entire region is soaked in a primeval green, dense forests filled with rare herbs, ferns, moss-draped trees, and cloud-dripping canopies that seem to inhale and exhale with the movement of the fog. When you walk beneath its trees, it feels as if the mountain is breathing alongside you, as if its roots have wrapped not only around the soil, but around time itself. To the local Miao people, one of China's largest and most culturally distinct ethnic minorities, Leigongshan is not just a mountain, it is the seat of a deity. Leigong, the thunder god, is believed to reside at its summit, watching over the lands below with a celestial drum in hand, ready to unleash his voice across the skies in booming, echoing waves. He is often depicted as a fearsome but just being, blue-skinned with wings and claws, a creature neither fully god nor beast, wielding thunderbolts to punish those who disrupt the balance of nature or commit hidden misdeeds. When storms break over the mountaintop, especially during the monsoon season, the crack and roll of thunder is not simply meteorological, it is the judgment of Leigong. Such beliefs are not museum pieces here. They are living, woven into the rhythm of life. Ceremonies are still performed on certain days of the lunar calendar, during which Miao shamans make offerings of rice wine, herbs, and the smoke of burning wood to appease the thunder god and seek protection from misfortune. High up in the forest, shrines and spirit stones can be found, simple constructions of weathered stone draped in red ribbons, half swallowed by the forest but vibrant in their symbolism. These sacred spaces often appear suddenly along forest paths, unexpected and powerful, as though the mountain itself chose where they should rest. Yet for all its spiritual weight, Mount Leigong is also an ecological sanctuary of national importance. Declared a nature reserve in modern times, the mountain harbors some of the richest biodiversity in China's subtropical highlands. Rare orchids cling to damp cliffs, and over 2,000 species of plants flourish here, including many with medicinal value, used for centuries in Miao herbal healing practices. Fauna thrives as well. Golden pheasants flash through the trees like moving fire, muntjacs tread cautiously along old hunting trails, and clouds of butterflies rise from riverbanks like petals in a breeze. One of the most breathtaking features of Gongsun is its shifting weather. A single day can pass through all 4 seasons. Mornings begin with low mist hanging in the valleys, curling around tree trunks and sinking into the ravines. By noon, sunlight pours through the forest canopy in golden shafts, illuminating pockets of moss and dew. And then, without warning, the sky can darken, the wind can stiffen, and thunder can roll in with sudden ferocity. Lightning tears the sky above the peak, and rain falls in sheets. The mountain roars, alive with storm. And just as quickly, the clouds part, and silence returns. An eerie, beautiful silence broken only by birdsong and the distant dripping of water from the trees. For those who make the climb to the higher reaches of Mount Wulingyuan, there is a sense of crossing into an older, quieter world. Stone paths lead through evergreen forests and across narrow ridges that open up to wide views of Guizhou's undulating terrain, hills that stretch like waves across the horizon. The summit itself is not marked by grand temples or infrastructure, but by wind-bent pines, worn boulders, and the taste of pure, crisp air that smells of moss, resin, and electric rain. The landscape feels untouched, as though human time has never truly taken hold here. But the most remarkable thing about Mount Wulingyuan is how seamlessly it fuses myth and matter. It is not a place where nature and legend are separate, but where they are indistinguishable. Every rustling tree, every thunderclap, every sudden shift in light feels like part of a story that is still being told, a myth still being lived. The Miao say that when you hear the thunder here, you must stop and listen, not because you are in danger, but because you are being addressed. The god speaks not to frighten, but to remind. In a world where mountains are often conquered, charted, and posted to social media, Mount Wulingyuan stands as something altogether different, not a peak to climb, but a being to meet. It asks nothing of its visitors except respect, and in return it offers a sense of scale, both physical and spiritual, that few places on Earth still provide. Standing beneath its trees as thunder echoes overhead, one does not feel like a hiker or a tourist. One feels like a guest, humbled and welcomed in equal measure, beneath the eyes of a mountain that remembers every storm it has ever seen. Tucked into the lush folds of Sichuan's western hills, where mist clings perpetually to the treetops and silence carries the weight of centuries, rises one of China's most spiritually resonant and visually enchanted mountains, Mount Qingcheng, or Qingcheng. Revered as the cradle of Taoism, this mountain has stood for millennia not only as a physical marvel of verdant wilderness and winding paths, but as a metaphysical sanctuary, a place where the veil between the earthly and the eternal seems worn thin. Here, philosophy, myth, and nature coexist not in layers, but as one indivisible whole. Unlike the jagged and imposing ranges of the Tibetan Plateau or the surreal pillars of Wulingyuan, Mount Qingcheng offers a gentler, more introspective beauty. Its slopes are densely forested, cloaked in an evergreen canopy that never truly loses its emerald hue. In every season, it wears its serenity like a robe of clouds. In spring, when flowers bloom quietly along temple walls. In summer, when cicadas buzz beneath the shade of ancient trees. In autumn, when golden light filters through rustling leaves. And in winter, when the frost sharpens the stillness and the moss-draped stones glisten like jade. What makes Mount Qingcheng so unreal is not only its sensory richness, but its metaphysical gravity. This mountain is not just a landscape, it is a scripture carved in earth and stone. Around the 2nd century CE, it was here that Zhong Daoling, the founder of religious Taoism, is said to have retreated to commune with the Tao, the Way. From those mountain meditations bloomed one of China's most enduring spiritual traditions, rooted in harmony with nature, inner balance, and the subtle energy flows of the universe. It is said that Qingcheng was chosen by the Tao itself, drawn by the mountain's perfect geomantic balance of yin and yang, shadow and light, forest and sky. Even today, the experience of walking Mount Qingcheng is not just a hike, but a passage into a living philosophy. The paths are narrow and meandering, often bordered by ancient stone balustrades and moss-covered steps that rise gradually through a thickening hush. Bamboo groves sway with a whispering rhythm as you pass. Small brooks gurgle beneath wooden footbridges. The air is cool, damp, and filled with the earthy aroma of pine needles and wildflowers. Each turn in the trail offers not just a new view, but a shift in ambience, as though the mountain arranges its moods deliberately, guiding visitors through a spiritual landscape as much as a physical one. Dotted throughout these forested corridors are the mountain's temples. Dozens of them, both grand and humble, each steeped in Taoist symbolism and local legend. The most famous is the Jianfu Palace, built into the forest like a secret return to the earth. Its red walls and upturned eaves peek through the trees like a vision from a dream. Inside, incense curls upward in slow spirals while the soft chanting of priests echoes off dark wooden beams. Deeper still lies the Qingcheng Palace, perched near the mountain summit, where golden statues of the three pure ones preside over a chamber of silent reverence. To reach it, one must ascend long flights of worn stone steps that vanish into mist, each step an act of spiritual ascent as much as physical effort. The journey through Qingcheng is intentionally meditative. Taoism teaches that the Tao cannot be forced or hurried. It must be approached with quietude and receptivity, and the mountain reflects this lesson in every detail. Nothing here is designed to overwhelm. There are no jagged cliffs to conquer or monumental heights to claim. Instead, there is immersion, in stillness, in shadow, in the delicate interplay of light falling on wet stone. A squirrel darting across the path, the sudden burst of a bird's call, the slow shifting of clouds across a green valley, these are the teachings of the mountain. But mysticism here is not only philosophical, it is also storied. Locals tell of fox spirits and mountain sages, of hermits who vanished into the cliffs and reappeared decades later, untouched by time. Some say the mountain is a labyrinth of hidden caves, known only to those who truly understand the way. Others speak of secret springs whose waters bestow longevity or dreams that reveal truths too subtle for waking minds. Whether literal or symbolic, these tales add a layer of ethereal depth to a place already saturated in meaning. At sunrise, the summit trails are wrapped in dense fog that glows faintly with the rising sun. The world turns pale gold, the trees become shadows, and the silence deepens to a meditative hum. When the sun finally crests the horizon and the light spills across the peaks, the entire mountain comes alive, not with sound, but with presence. The temples seem to breathe, the leaves shimmer as if in prayer, and the mountain itself feels animate, aware, ancient. And it is ancient. Qingcheng is not only spiritually significant but historically rich. Over the centuries, it has been a refuge for scholars, monks, and seekers of wisdom. During times of war and dynastic upheaval, emperors and outcasts alike found solace among its hidden groves. Scrolls were written here that shaped Chinese metaphysics. Ideas born beneath its trees still ripple through Chinese medicine, martial arts, and spiritual practice to this day. Unlike many sacred sites which have become grand monuments of tourism, Qingcheng remains modest, intimate, and alive. Its paths are not paved in marble but lined with roots and fallen leaves. Its greatness lies not in towering spectacle, but in its ability to slow the heartbeat, to quiet the mind, to invite the visitor into a dialogue with something older, softer, and deeper than words. To walk on Mount Qingcheng is to step not just into a forest, but into a philosophy. Every rock, every whispering leaf, every mossy stair holds a quiet invitation. To listen, to soften, to remember what it feels like to be part of the world rather than apart from it. In an age that races forward, Qingcheng waits, not behind, but beneath, like the undercurrent of a deeper truth. It doesn't demand enlightenment, it offers balance. And for those who make the journey with open eyes and quiet feet, it answers in the soft language of wind and shadow, the language of the Tao. In the vast, storied reaches of Xinjiang, where deserts stretch like ochre oceans and ancient Silk Road routes wind through caravan cities lost to time, there rises a mountain of a different temperament altogether. It does not belong to the sand, nor to the plains, but to the clouds. Towering above the arid basins and dry riverbeds of eastern Qianshan, Bogda Peak emerges like a celestial blade from the earth, jagged, glacier-wrapped, and impossibly aloof. Its name, Bogda, means sacred in Mongolic tongues, and the moment its dagger-like silhouette breaks through the horizon, one understands the reverence such a name commands. Here is a mountain that doesn't merely stand tall, it reigns. At 5,445 meters, Bogda is the highest point in the eastern segment of the Qianshan Mountains, a massive range that sweeps across Central Asia like the spinal ridge of the continent. But while the western and central Qianshan are renowned for their sprawling meadows and pastoral glens, Bogda's domain is different, harsher, sharper, and far more isolated. Its profile is a sheer wall of serrated ridgelines, frozen glacier, and black, broken stone. There is no softness here, no foothills to ease the ascent, only a sudden rise, like a thrust of bone from the Earth's chest, stabbing into the sky above the Turpan Depression, one of the lowest and hottest points on the continent. This juxtaposition is what makes Bogda so surreal. At its base lies a desert of flame, where summer temperatures climb beyond 45 degrees Celsius and rain is a distant rumor. Yet just above, within a matter of vertical kilometers, glaciers sprawl across Bogda's shoulders like veils of shattered glass. Snowfields glisten year-round beneath a deep, unpolluted sky, and ice clings to craggy ledges that haven't known a thaw in generations. The effect is like encountering two worlds in collision: desert and ice, furnace and freezer, the ancient stillness of snow set directly above a land of burning stone. Bogda's glacier are among the most magnificent in the eastern Qingcheng. The most famous is the Glacier No. 1, also called Dabanqing Glacier, an enormous, slowly creeping river of ice that descends from the northern slopes. These glaciers feed hidden alpine lakes of startling blue, Karnas-like in their purity and mystery, surrounded by wildflower-strewn meadows that bloom only for a few weeks each year before frost and wind reclaim the land. The meltwater from these ice rivers gives life to the surrounding regions, sustaining oases and mountain forests that appear like mirages against the backdrop of stark rock. Climbing Bogda is not a casual affair. It is among the most technically difficult peaks in all of China, rarely summited and seldom attempted without serious alpine preparation. Its faces are treacherously steep, littered with crevasses, ice cliffs, and the ever-present threat of avalanches. Weather can shift within minutes, sunshine turning to white oak blizzards, skies choked with snow or slashed by lightning. For these reasons, Bogda has preserved its sense of mystique and inviolability. Few human feet touch its highest stones, and those who do return changed, not merely by the climb, but by the sheer silence and scale of the place. Yet it is not only climbers who seek the mountain. Herders from nearby Kazakh and Uyghur communities still move through the lower valleys during the grazing seasons, setting up yurts beneath the arms of the range and living as their ancestors have for centuries. These nomads regard Bogda with a mixture of awe and fear, spinning tales of mountain spirits, frozen gods, and ancestral protectors that live within the ice. Local lore holds that Bogda is alive, that it dreams during the long winter, and that the crack of its glacier is the sound of it shifting in its sleep. When the mountain growls, they say, one must light a fire and speak to it, or risk misfortune. From the north, one of the most accessible and visually dramatic approaches to Bogda is through the Qingcheng area, Heavenly Lake, a sapphire-blue glacial lake cradled between pine-clad ridges and steep granite slopes. Qingcheng itself is a wonder, mirror-still, perfectly framed, its waters reflecting both the stars above and the towering face of Bogda to the south. On still days, the image of the peak in the lake is so crisp it becomes difficult to tell where reflection ends and reality begins. From this vantage point, the mountain appears as a guardian over the realm, a spirit of snow and stone watching in solemn silence. The forests that surround Qingcheng and the lower flanks of Bogda are among the most pristine in Xinjiang. Spruce, larch, and fir dominate, interspersed with alpine herbs and rare medicinal plants. Wildlife thrives here. Snow leopards, though elusive, prowl the remote heights. Ibex dance across cliff edges like shadows with horns, and golden eagles circle the sky, riding thermal currents that rise from the heated plains far below. But above the tree line, beyond even the reach of hardy flora and mountain sheep, the world changes again. Up there, above 4,500 meters, the silence becomes overwhelming. The wind has a voice, yes, but it speaks in long pauses and sharp howls. The sky takes on an intensity of blue that seems almost artificial, and the snow, untainted by human presence, reflects the light with a brilliance that blinds. In such an environment, one does not feel like a conqueror or explorer, but like a witness. Bogda does not yield to ego or ambition. It does not welcome or refuse. It simply is. Its sacred status, first whispered by ancient tribes, later acknowledged by modern cartographers, feels deeply earned. Mountains like Bogda are rare not because they are tall, but because they remain untouched by time in any recognizable human sense. In a region of deserts and ruins, where history is written in shifting sands and crumbling Silk Road walls, Bogda remains unchanged. It does not erode. It does not age. It exists as it always has, a frozen paradox of fire and ice, presence and distance, divinity and indifference. To stand beneath Bogda Peak is to feel the earth as it once was, raw, elemental, unconcerned with human drama. It is to confront nature not as a park or a panorama, but as a force. Unreal not because it is imaginary, but because it makes everything else seem less real by comparison. It belongs to no one, owes nothing, and asks only that those who approach do so with silence in their step and awe in their hearts. In the northeastern frontier of China, where the land begins to mirror the frozen reaches of Siberia and the air tastes of ice even in spring, Mount Jinlong, literally Golden Dragon Mountain, rises quietly above the snowy plains of Heilongjiang. Not far from Harbin, a city known for its Baroque Russian architecture and world-renowned ice sculpture festivals, Jinlongshan stands in contrast to the ornate and the artificial. It is a realm of natural winter majesty, a place where pine trees droop under the weight of snow, where mist clings to frozen branches, and where silence rules more powerfully than wind. Though modest in elevation compared to the giants of western China, Mount Jinlong exudes a mystical stillness. Its beauty lies not in towering cliffs or sheer heights, but in its ethereal winter presence. In these parts, the mountain slopes are coated in snow for more than half the year, creating a serene white world broken only by the dark spires of pine and fir. These forests cloak the entire mountain in a dense, breathing silence, interrupted only by the occasional rustle of wind or the call of a distant magpie. What makes Jinlongshan truly surreal is the way it fuses the harshness of northern winters with a strangely meditative softness. The snow here isn't just a covering, it becomes the atmosphere, the backdrop, the ground, and even the air itself. Heavy fogs drift through the forested slopes in the early morning, and frost clings to every exposed surface, from wooden shrines to the smallest blades of grass. Each pine needle carries a delicate hoar frost, turning whole trees into shimmering sculptures of white crystal. The mountain's name, Golden Dragon, is deeply tied to both local legend and seasonal transformation. According to regional folklore, a dragon once slept beneath these hills, its long body coiling through the earth like molten gold. In summer, when the forests are green and the soil fertile, that golden dragon is said to stretch and move, blessing the land with vitality. But in winter, it slumbers once more, cloaked beneath layers of snow and ice, dreaming of fire while the landscape freezes in reverent silence. In wintertime, especially between December and February, the mountain becomes a destination for those who seek something beyond the tourist spectacles of Harbin. While crowds gather in the city for the Ice Lantern Festival, others venture out to Jinlongshan for a quieter communion with nature. The forest trails, though gently sloping, become pathways into a living snowscape where one can walk for hours and encounter no sound but the muffled crunch of boots on powder. These trails are ancient, worn into the land by generations of pilgrims, hunters, and monks. Hidden among the slopes are several small Buddhist temples and hermitages, many constructed of simple stone and wood, their eaves sagging slightly under the weight of centuries and frost. Monks in saffron robes tend to fires and incense inside these sanctuaries, their chants echoing through snow-covered pines like distant music. The juxtaposition of sacred flame and frozen world gives the entire mountain an atmosphere of timelessness, as though it exists outside the normal flow of seasons, quietly waiting for spring to arrive, but not in a hurry. Spring, when it finally does come, arrives not with the bombast of blossoms but with a slow melt. Ice retreats reluctantly from rock, rivulets of snowmelt cut channels through mossy ground, and the green of pine needles returns in glimmers beneath thinning frost. During this time, Jinlongshan is bathed in misty sunlight, the kind that filters through still bare branches and illuminates the lingering ice like lanterns in fog. The mountain becomes not just a winter wonderland but a place of transformation, where nature, like the golden dragon beneath the soil, stirs again. In summer, the mountain takes on an entirely different character. The same slopes that were white and silent are now emerald and alive. The thick pine forests become havens for wildlife. Sika deer, foxes, and even elusive black bears move softly among the trees. Wild mushrooms emerge in abundance, and local foragers, many elderly residents from surrounding villages, collect them alongside medicinal herbs and edible ferns. The air smells of moss and resin, and cool streams run clear over smooth stones, offering moments of refreshment in the humid northern heat. Yet even in its summer bloom, there remains a lingering air of winter about Mount Jinlong. Perhaps it is the memory of snow in the bark of the trees, or the way the wind carries whispers that feel colder than the air around them. This duality, of lush life and latent ice, makes Jinlongshan one of the most unique natural sights in the northeast. For those interested in culture and heritage, the mountain also offers a glimpse into the rich tapestry of Manchu and Russian influence that permeates Heilongjiang. Nearby villages retain architectural remnants of the Qing frontier outposts and Russian settlements, with onion-domed churches and wooden cottages dotting the periphery of Jinlongshan. During certain festivals, traditional Manchu songs and dances are performed in open spaces near the mountain's base, their sounds drifting into the foothills where history and myth remain indistinguishable. In the autumn months, the mountain transforms once more. Brilliant golds, reds, and oranges blaze across the forest canopy, setting Jinlongshan alight with color. The name Golden Dragon finds new meaning as maple and birch leaves carpet the trails in shimmering hues. The air grows crisp, and the first whispers of winter can once again be felt in the early morning frost. Mount Jinlong is not a place of dramatic peaks or sweeping geological phenomena. It does not boast volcanic vents or 100-meter waterfalls, yet it remains undeniably unreal in its own quiet, poetic way. It is a sanctuary of snow and shadow, of frost-covered shrines and pine-scented air. It invites not conquest or spectacle, but stillness, asking those who enter its realm to listen, observe, and feel. In a world increasingly driven by noise and speed, Mount Jinlong offers a different kind of experience. One where time slows, senses awaken, and the sacred beauty of nature reveals itself not in grandeur, but in silence. It is a reminder that some of the most unreal places on the planet are not always the most imposing, but the most serene. Nestled in the snowy embrace of Heilongjiang's rolling terrain, not far from the vibrant energy of Harbin City, Mount Erlong, known locally as Erlongshan, offers a peaceful and enchanting counterpart to its neighboring peak, Jinlongshan. While the nearby Mount Jinlong evokes reverence with its mystical forests and frosted silence, Erlongshan takes on the role of a gentle guardian, welcoming rather than humbling, lively yet deeply soothing. It is a place where recreation and reflection harmoniously coexist, where families glide down ski slopes by day, and forests whisper old stories by night. Erlongshan is not a towering behemoth. Its elevation is modest, yet its reputation stretches far, especially among those who seek winter escapades in northern China. The mountain is best known for its serene beauty and its multifaceted seasonal appeal. In winter, it transforms into one of the most popular ski and snowplay resorts in Heilongjiang, but its charm lingers throughout all seasons, changing outfits from snowy white to emerald green, to golden russet, like a living calendar of the year. The name Erlong, meaning two dragons, has sparked folklore across generations. Locals tell of twin dragon spirits said to have slept beneath the mountain in ancient times. One was restless and wild, carving deep ravines and blowing cold air across the slopes. The other was calm and nurturing, shaping the mountain's soft ridges, quiet lakes, and gentle streams. Their opposing natures are said to remain in balance within the mountain, giving it both its tranquil disposition and its seasonal vitality. During winter, Mount Erlong is blanketed in snow, but unlike the isolated wildernesses of China's high-altitude ranges, Erlongshan Snowscape is designed for human engagement. The Erlongshan Ski Resort, one of the earliest and most accessible in the region, draws enthusiasts from across Northeast Asia. With well-maintained slopes for beginners, intermediate skiers, and even snowboarders, the mountain buzzes with energy during ski season. Chair lifts ascend over snow-covered forests, offering sweeping views of white terrain that stretches as far as the frozen horizon. Despite this liveliness, the mountain retains a natural peace. The ski resort occupies only a portion of the mountain, leaving large tracts of untouched forest to the wild. These quieter areas attract snowshoe hikers and nature lovers who wander through trails lined with birch, pine, and spruce. The snow here is soft and deep, muffling sound so thoroughly that even footsteps seem to disappear. Frozen streams sparkle like glass ribbons, and the occasional deer track in the snow reminds visitors that humans are guests in a land still claimed by nature. In spring, the snow slowly recedes, revealing a softer, earthier face. Erlongshan's natural ecosystem begins to stir. Streams swell with meltwater, wildflowers bloom shyly beneath the budding trees, and songbirds return in vibrant flocks. One of the most captivating features of the mountain in warmer seasons is its calm, reflective lakes. The main lake, Erlongshan Lake, sits nestled at the base of the mountain like a silver mirror framed in green. In early morning, mist often rises from its surface, shrouding the surrounding hills in ethereal beauty. Fishermen in wooden boats drift silently across its waters, and children skip stones from grassy banks while dragonflies buzz above water lilies. The forests that blanket the mountain are diverse and thriving. They harbor dozens of bird species, from thrushes to hawks, and are home to hares, foxes, and occasionally even wild boar. The forest floor is rich in herbs, mushrooms, and medicinal plants, and many villagers still visit the slopes in late summer to gather what the mountain offers. Wooden cabins and rest pavilions, designed in traditional northern Chinese architecture, to the trails, offering shaded places to rest and appreciate the scenery. Cultural richness deepens Erlongshan's identity. Though not as heavily associated with myth or religion as Mount Qingcheng or Mount Amei, Erlongshan is not without its spiritual weight. Small Buddhist temples and Taoist shrines can be found along lesser-known trails, often tucked behind groves or perched above streams, places where monks and laypersons alike come to meditate. These sacred spaces aren't grand or crowded. They are intimate, quiet corners of the world, where wind in the trees often becomes the loudest sound. During autumn, Erlongshan's forests erupt into a fiery palette of color. Maple and oak blaze in red and orange, their leaves carpeting the ground in warmth before the snow inevitably returns. Hikers flock to the mountain in this season for its photogenic beauty. The trails glow with golden light filtered through thinning canopies, and the crisp air smells of fallen leaves and damp earth. Autumn at Erlongshan is not a closing act. It feels like a gentle crescendo before the soft white curtain of winter falls again. Perhaps most surprising to visitors is how easily Erlongshan balances accessibility and authenticity. Despite being a popular destination for city dwellers from Harbin and other parts of northeastern China, the mountain has not been overdeveloped or commercialized to the point of losing its soul. While it offers modern amenities, hotels, lodges, restaurants, and sports facilities, there remains a strong preservation ethic. Much of the land is protected, and ecotourism is encouraged over mass tourism. Visitors are taught to respect the forest, to tread lightly, and to take away only memories. In many ways, Mount Erlong represents the ideal of a modern unreal place, somewhere that merges natural beauty, seasonal transformation, spiritual peace, and thoughtful recreation. It is a reminder that unreal does not always mean extreme or inaccessible. Sometimes it means a gentle slope rather than a jagged cliff, a quiet lake instead of a roaring waterfall, or the sound of skis carving through fresh powder beneath a pale winter sun. Mount Erlong is that rare place where you can lose yourself not in overwhelming grandeur but in perfect proportion. Whether cloaked in snow, basking in sunlight, or glowing beneath golden leaves, it offers an experience that feels gently surreal, like stepping into a dream not filled with awe, but with quiet joy. And in a world constantly racing forward, Erlongshan's greatest gift may be its invitation to pause. Rising dramatically from the eastern landscapes of Zhejiang, not far from the Pacific shoreline, Mount Yangdang, known in Chinese as Yandangshan, is a surreal masterpiece carved by time, fire, and water. It is a place where nature's architecture borders on the fantastical, where cliffs soar like stone cathedrals, slender rock spires stand like silent sentinels, and waterfalls plunge in shimmering veils between moss-covered walls. Revered for centuries as one of China's great scenic mountains, Yandangshan is more than just a geological marvel, it's a living painting of vertical stone and cascading water, imbued with spiritual reverence and timeless elegance. The very name Yangdang is rich in natural poetry. Yang refers to wild geese, and Dang implies a serene pond, together alluding to the tranquil lake at the summit where wild geese once gathered. This picturesque image encapsulates the dual nature of the mountain, a place of intense drama and deep calm. Located in the prefecture-level city of Wenzhou, Yandangshan is a coastal mountain, shaped not only by tectonic forces but also by ancient volcanic activity. Its unique topography is the result of 120-million-year-old rhyolitic lava flows that hardened into vertical cliffs and bizarrely eroded formations, producing some of the most iconic geological silhouettes in all of China. Chief among these is the awe-inspiring Lingfeng Peak, or Spirit Edge Peak. By day, its vertical face appears like a solid wall of stone, etched with the jagged outlines of time. But by night, especially during the moonlit hours, it transforms into something mythic. Tourists gather along winding paths and wooden platforms to witness Night Lingfeng, a revered phenomenon where the peak's profile, bathed in moonlight, resembles the graceful figure of a robed monk or a meditating deity. This almost supernatural shift in perception speaks to why the mountain has drawn painters, poets, monks, and seekers of the sublime for more than 1,000 years. Further along the mountain's network of trails lies Lingyan Rock, another towering formation whose name means Spirit Rock. Like Lingfeng, it commands immediate attention, not through sheer size alone but through its sheer verticality. Below this wall of stone lies the famed Lingyan Temple, nestled against the cliffs with a stoic grace. The temple's presence here is not coincidental. Yandangshan has long been a cradle of Chinese religious tradition, especially Buddhism. Many monks have found refuge and enlightenment among its misty trails and waterfall echo chambers. The landscape here does not just suggest spiritual transcendence, it almost insists on it. Then there is the Deluo waterfall, one of the crown jewels of the Yangdang range. It plunges down over 200 meters, around 650 feet, slicing through a chasm of basalt with an ethereal shimmer. In the rainy season, the waterfall roars like a living dragon, its mists veiling the cliff face in a spectral dance. In drier months, it becomes a slender silver thread, almost more beautiful for its restraint. The contrast between the solid permanence of the rock and the fluid impermanence of the water creates a meditative balance that feels both ancient and immediate. Perhaps one of the most surreal features of Mount Yangdang is the formation known as Guanyin Peak. Named after the Bodhisattva of compassion, this narrow vertical spire appears to take on the shape of a human figure, robed, tall, and dignified, when viewed from certain angles. Legend holds that the mountain spirit once took the form of Guanyin to guide lost travelers, and that her presence still dwells in the stone. Whether one believes the legend or not, the resemblance is uncanny enough to stir a sense of reverence in even the most skeptical visitor. But Yandangshan is not just a collection of remarkable peaks and waterfalls, it is a vibrant ecosystem teeming with life. Subtropical vegetation thrives along its slopes, with bamboo groves, camphor trees, and ferns creating a lush green canvas. Rare bird species nest along the cliffs, while macaques, civets, and squirrels scamper through the underbrush. The interplay between vertical rock and green life gives the mountain a striking visual texture. Soft foliage clinging to impossible stone angles, trees growing sideways from crevices, and vines cascading like natural tapestries. Unlike the towering and isolated mountains of China's western frontier, Yandangshan is more intimately scaled, making it highly walkable and profoundly immersive. Stone paths wind through gorges, across suspension bridges, and up ancient stairways hewn directly from the rock. These routes, many of which date back to imperial times, allow modern visitors to retrace the steps of generations past. Some trails lead to still inhabited cliffside temples, where monks live humbly in rooms carved from the mountainside, their incense blending with the forest air. One of the most astonishing experiences the mountain offers is the sunrise over the sea-facing cliffs. On clear mornings, the horizon becomes a melting palette of orange, lavender, and gold. From vantage points such as Baishangji, White Palm Cliff, visitors can watch the first rays of sunlight stretch across the ocean, casting long shadows over the mountain's surreal stone sculptures. The silence is often broken only by the distant call of birds or the sudden splash of a fish in the nearby lakes, reminders that this unreal place is deeply alive. Culturally, Yandangshan has long been celebrated in Chinese poetry and painting, especially during the Tang and Song dynasties. Literati would travel for days to see its famed formations, describing the landscape as a meeting place of heaven and earth. That tradition continues today, as artists and photographers from all over the world seek to capture its elusive angles and shifting moods. Yet no photograph, no painting, can truly replicate the immersive presence of the mountain, the way it hums with ancient energy, the way fog slips silently across a cliff's edge, or how a waterfall's voice changes with the wind. The local communities living around the base of the mountain, mostly Han Chinese with deep-rooted traditions, add another layer of authenticity to the experience. Small villages, tea houses, and markets welcome travelers with local delicacies like bamboo shoots, mountain herbs, and hand-pulled noodles. In these places, one feels not as a tourist but as a temporary resident of a much older world, one where mountains are still sacred and silence still holds meaning. Mount Yangdang is not simply beautiful, it is deeply theatrical. Every vista feels staged for a moment of reflection or awe. Its sharp angles and vertical drama evoke comparisons to fantasy films or alien landscapes, and indeed, much like Zhangjiaji's Wulingyuan inspired the floating mountains of Avatar, Yandangshan feels otherworldly in its proportions and serenity. Yet it remains accessible, loved, and alive, reminding us that the most unreal places on Earth are sometimes the ones most rooted in myth, memory, and the patient hands of time. Mount Lingshan, the highest peak in the Beijing municipality, stands quietly and majestically in the western edge of the capital's boundaries, brushing shoulders with the border of Hebei province. Rising to an elevation of over 2,300 meters, about 7,546 feet, this mountain is not only Beijing's rooftop, but also one of its most ethereal and surprising landscapes, far removed from the modern steel and stone of the city center. Often cloaked in snow during the colder months and transformed into a sea of green meadows in the spring and summer, Lingshan is one of those rare places where alpine majesty exists just a few hours' drive from one of the world's most crowded capitals. Lingshan, or Spirit Mountain, earns its name honestly. While Beijing's popular parks and cultural monuments are saturated with tourists, Lingshan remains a hidden sanctuary, a realm that feels closer to the Tibetan plateau than to the Forbidden City. The drive up to the scenic area takes travelers through a gradual transformation of terrain, from bustling suburban fringes to steep, forested roads flanked by rocky outcrops and distant peaks. The moment one crosses into the Lingshan scenic area, there's an immediate sense of detachment from the lowland world below. The air grows thinner, purer, and tinged with the scent of pine and wildflowers. What makes Lingshan so unique, and so surreal, is the unexpected diversity of its ecosystems. Unlike the drier, dusty hills that characterize much of northern China's outskirts, Lingshan harbors lush alpine meadows at its summit, reminiscent more of the Qingcheng Tibet Plateau than anything near urban Beijing. These meadows burst into bloom from May to August, blanketing the landscape with waves of violet, yellow, and white wildflowers. Delicate Himalayan poppies sway in the wind alongside buttercups and edelweiss. Grazing quietly in this highland paradise are herds of yaks. Yes, yaks, in northern Beijing. These animals, typically associated with the Tibetan highlands, are a visual and cultural surprise here, a reminder that the altitude and climate of Lingshan create a parallel environment to China's far western frontiers. The presence of yaks, as well as Tibetan-style prayer flags fluttering in the breeze at some viewpoints, gives the mountaintop an unexpected spiritual and cultural overlay. It feels like a highland borderland, where Han Chinese and Tibetan influences quietly mingle, not through temples or architecture, but through atmosphere. Local herders and vendors often wear traditional clothing and sell milk-based snacks like yogurt and cheese, adding to the mountain's distinctly non-metropolitan character. The summit of Lingshan is often crowned with snow from late autumn to early spring, turning the mountaintop into a white wilderness that seems to belong more to the Himalayas than to eastern China. During these months, trees wear coats of frost, trails become silent corridors of crunching snow, and distant views open up across frozen ridges. On especially clear days, one can look out across an expanse of northern China's mountainous interior, the landscape rolling away in serrated waves beneath a crystalline sky. The silence at the top is profound, broken only by the wind or the occasional call of a raptor wheeling above. Yet Lingshan is not merely about panoramic grandeur. It's also rich in micro-environments and quiet discoveries. The lower slopes are clad in temperate deciduous forest, home to Chinese pines, birches, and even ancient juniper trees. In autumn, the foliage turns a blaze of crimson and gold, making the area a hidden jewel for leaf watchers. Deer and foxes roam these woodlands, while golden eagles and falcons circle the skies. The biodiversity here is striking, especially considering its proximity to Beijing's megacity sprawl. The trails that wind through Lingshan vary in difficulty, ranging from wide, gradual paths for casual hikers to steep, stony ascents that demand stamina and reward persistence. One particularly rewarding route is the climb to the main ridge that skirts the very edge of the mountain's eastern face. From here, the view drops away dramatically, revealing a sheer descent into a basin of forest far below. Hikers often pause here to catch their breath and take in the sense of vertical awe, enhanced by the faint sight of the city skyline far in the distance, a mere suggestion on the hazy horizon. In the summer, Lingshan offers a completely different kind of surreal beauty. The heat of Beijing below seems worlds away as the mountain breeze cools the air to a crisp perfection. Local families hike up with picnic baskets, children chase butterflies through flowered clearings, and small mobile tea vendors set up under makeshift canvas tents to sell warm barley tea, sunflower seeds, and boiled eggs. It's a communal joy not often found in the more commercialized nature reserves, and it adds a touch of grassroots humanity to the otherwise vast and solitary terrain. Culturally, while Mount Lingshan lacks the deep religious history of peaks like Amei or Wutai, it carries a quiet reverence all its own. Its isolation has long drawn those seeking peace and retreat from urban life. In recent years, local governments have recognized the area's unique ecological and spiritual value and have been slow to overdevelop it. As a result, the scenic area remains mostly free from the excessive commercialization that mars other popular mountains. There are no cable cars or glass walkways here, just raw landscape and patient paths. Legends do swirl around Lingshan, of course. Mountains in China always attract stories. One popular tale speaks of a hidden temple once located on a saddle of the ridge, struck by lightning and lost to the ages. Some say that hermits still live in its ruins, meditating among the juniper trees and wandering deer. Whether real or not, such myths add to the mountain's allure, deepening the sense that Lingshan is more than a day hike. It is a place that feels suspended between earth and sky, between city and wilderness, between history and legend. Even the climate here feels somehow enchanted. Clouds often drape themselves over the summit like flowing robes, only to be swept away by sudden gusts of wind. Rain comes and goes in sweeping curtains, revealing double rainbows over distant ridges. In the early morning, frost sparkles on the wildflowers, and the sun rises in bursts of gold and rose over the mountain's shoulder. Everything feels heightened, as if Lingshan amplifies the sensory world for those who climb it. To visit Mount Lingshan is to discover a different face of Beijing, one that is quiet, elevated, and steeped in a wild grace. It reminds us that even within the borders of a sprawling metropolis, the natural world holds pockets of the extraordinary. Lingshan is not just a mountain, it is a threshold into another reality, a windblown, flower-carpeted dream balanced high above the noise. Mount Jiulong, or Julongshan, unfurls its lush green arms across the tranquil corners of Anhui province, quietly embodying the poetic charm of southern China. Translated as Nine Dragon Mountain, Julongshan derives its name from its ridgeline that, when viewed from above, resembles the coiling forms of 9 dragons slithering through a sea of trees. Unlike the towering peaks that pierce the clouds in western China, Mount Jiulong captivates not with altitude, but with atmosphere. It is a mountain steeped in subtlety, rolling, forested, and forever breathing with mist. Its beauty lies in the harmonious interaction of man and nature. Verdant tea terraces curling around its base, ancient villages nestled in its folds, and footpaths that disappear into bamboo thickets and moss-covered stones. Located in the hinterlands of Anhui, far from the crowded tourist corridors of Huangshan or Zhouhua, Julongshan exists in a liminal space between the mystical and the pastoral. It is where Daoist stillness meets agrarian rhythm. Morning fog rolls over the canopy like slow breath, blanketing stone cottages with dew and veiling the mountain in layers of mystery. The forests here are a painter's palette of green, bamboo, pine, maple, camphor, and chestnut, each adding its own shade, its own texture to the unfolding landscape. Walking through Mount Jiulong's terrain is an immersion into both geography and history. The trails, though often gentle and meandering, guide visitors past secluded groves, gurgling brooks, and centuries-old villages where time appears to have stalled. In spring, the lower slopes ignite in soft pinks and whites as cherry blossoms and plum trees bloom. In summer, the trails are canopied in rich foliage, and cicadas sing loudly in the humid shade. Autumn is a quiet inferno of red maples and golden ginkgo trees. And in winter, a dusting of frost turns Julongshan into a subtle watercolor landscape, washed in grays and whites. At the base of the mountain lie wide swaths of tea plantations, orderly rows of emerald bushes terracing the hills like delicate embroidery. These tea fields, nurtured by mineral-rich mountain soil and mist-laden air, produce leaves of exceptional quality, often processed into local green teas treasured across the province. Women in broad straw hats and blue tunics still handpick leaves in the early morning, their movements practiced and reverent. The sound of bamboo baskets rustling and the soft clink of tea leaves falling is nearly the only noise in some sections of the mountain. The villages around Julongshan are living museums of traditional Anhui architecture. Whitewashed walls, black tile roofs, intricately carved wooden beams, and stone-paved alleys winding past ancestral halls and shrines. Many of these settlements have stood for hundreds of years, some dating back to the Ming and Qing dynasties. The locals, primarily farmers and tea cultivators, live by the old rhythms of the land, waking with the sun, dining on homegrown rice and vegetables, and telling stories under moonlit eaves. Enter one of these homes, and you may find an old scroll of calligraphy hanging beside a smoky hearth, or a worn-out zither resting beside a window that frames nothing but forest. Legends linger in this mountain, whispered like wind through the bamboo. Julongshan is said to have once been guarded by 9 celestial dragons, protectors of the sacred waters that flow from its heart. Local folk speak of hidden springs that never run dry, of caves that open only on solstice nights, and of hermits who once lived in seclusion, meditating for decades among the trees. Some trails lead to abandoned Taoist pavilions now overgrown with ivy and moss, where stone inscriptions still declare cryptic poems to the sky and wind. One particularly secluded grotto near the upper ridges is known to locals as Dragon's Breath Hollow, where cold mist billows continuously even on warm summer days, as if the mountain still breathes. What elevates Julongshan from mere pastoral charm to something surreal is the quiet tension between the cultivated and the wild. You might hike past a perfectly trimmed tea terrace and suddenly find yourself in a dense pine forest with no visible trail. An old woman might guide you to a shrine hidden behind a veil of vines and boulders, where a spring trickles from a dragon's mouth carved in stone, said to heal any illness if you drink from it under the full moon. Birds here are unafraid, often flitting close to passers-by, and the forests resound with the calls of cuckoos and the soft rustle of bamboo swaying in the wind. Sunrises on Mount Wulingyuan are especially magical. The peaks are not sharp or craggy, but rounded like the backs of sleeping beasts. As dawn breaks, the first golden light spills across the treetops, igniting layers of mist that cling to the valleys. The clouds, often low-hanging, drift slowly through the folds, catching light in luminous waves. From certain clearings, one can see entire tea valleys bathed in ethereal morning haze, broken only by narrow stone paths and tiny human silhouettes moving up the slopes with their harvest baskets. It is in these moments that Julongshan ceases to be merely a mountain. It becomes a dreamscape, a place where heaven and earth seem close enough to touch. In recent years, efforts have been made to preserve the natural and cultural integrity of the Julongshan region. Ecotourism initiatives encourage sustainable travel, while local elders teach visitors about traditional farming, foraging, and the spiritual relationship between humans and mountain. Yet, unlike the more famous peaks of China, Julongshan has avoided overdevelopment. There are no cable cars here, no glaring neon signs, no intrusive resorts. The mountain remains silent in its grandeur, allowing its rhythm to continue unbroken. In essence, Mount Wulingyuan is not a place of spectacle, it is a place of soul. It invites stillness rather than excitement, reverence instead of conquest. It's a place where walking slowly matters, where pausing to listen to wind in leaves or to feel the texture of lichen on an old temple wall becomes part of the journey. It is a landscape for poets and pilgrims, for wanderers who seek not just beauty but meaning. Here, in the soft shadows of its ridges, beneath the dripping boughs of ancient trees, and amid the rising steam of tea cups on stone tables, the unreal becomes real, and the real becomes sacred. Mount Qingliang, also known as Qingliangfeng, sits gently veiled in the mists of western Zhejiang, straddling the border with Anhui province. The name Qingliang translates to cool and refreshing, a title that speaks to the mountain's character as much as its climate. Here, in this softly breathing highland cloaked in fog and mystery, the boundary between the material world and the spiritual seems almost permeable. Qingliangfeng is not a mountain that shouts its presence. It whispers, drawing the traveler in through its subtlety, its purity, and its deep and ancient stillness. Unlike the drama of vertical cliffs or volcanic peaks, Mount Qingliang is all about atmosphere. It is one of the highest peaks in the Qianmu mountain range, but it rarely feels imposing. Instead, it unfolds gradually, gentle slopes rising into quiet ridges, thick forests dripping with dew, and hidden trails that disappear into the white embrace of fog. These are not forests merely to look at, they are forests to enter, to be enveloped by, to wander through in awe. Centuries-old firs and pines reach skyward, their trunks wrapped in moss and lichens. Bamboo groves sway and creak in the wind. Rare orchids bloom along secluded paths, and crystal-clear mountain streams babble their way over stones that shimmer like polished jade. What sets Mount Qingliang apart is its exquisite ecological richness. The area surrounding the peak is part of the Qingliangfeng National Nature Reserve, a sanctuary renowned for its biodiversity. It is home to endangered species such as the Chinese giant salamander and the clouded leopard, as well as dozens of rare birds, butterflies, and medicinal plants. The reserve is a living laboratory of subtropical broadleaf forests blending with temperate flora, a place where different ecosystems overlap in delicate harmony. Botanists and zoologists alike speak of Qingliangfeng in reverent tones. It is one of eastern China's last bastions of unspoiled wilderness. Even in summer, the temperature remains cool and pleasant. The mountain's high altitude and dense forest cover ensure that even on the hottest days, its trails feel fresh, shaded, and almost alpine. The ever-present mist that clings to the peaks is not just weather, it's an essence. It wraps the landscape in mystery, softening every outline and muting every color. Trees fade into it just a few meters ahead. Crickets sing through it. Distant bells from hidden temples echo within it. The mist creates not just beauty, but silence, an enveloping hush that invites meditation and reflection. It is no surprise, then, that Mount Qingliang has long been a haven for monks, hermits, and spiritual seekers. Hidden throughout its folds are secluded Buddhist temples and Taoist sanctuaries, some long abandoned and reclaimed by nature, others still quietly active. These are not grand pilgrimage centers filled with tourists. Rather, they are intimate places of devotion, often no more than wooden halls tucked into the forest, their incense smoke curling into the trees. In some, the chanting of monks can be heard at dawn, a low, rhythmic hum that seems to resonate with the mountain itself. In others, you may find a single caretaker sweeping fallen leaves, pausing only to offer tea to a passing traveler. One of the most revered spiritual sites is the Qingliang Temple, a modest but serene complex nestled along a high ridge where mist rolls like a living thing through the stone courtyards. The temple has stood for centuries, though it has been rebuilt many times after storms and landslides. Within its walls are weathered statues of the Buddha, ancient bells suspended from red beams, and altars covered in offerings of fruit, incense, and prayer scrolls. The monks who live here follow a simple, disciplined life, rising with the sun, tending gardens, chanting scriptures, and practicing calligraphy on wide stone tables overlooking the cloud sea below. Visitors are welcome, but never fussed over. Silence is the language here. In autumn, the mountain transforms. The forests blaze with color, deep crimson maples, golden ginkgo trees, and fire-hued vines that climb the grey stone faces. Leaves fall like slow rain, carpeting the trails in a soft mosaic. It is the season when Qingliangfeng feels most alive in its transition, reminding all who visit that stillness is not the absence of motion, but the perfection of it. Winter, by contrast, is a realm of purity. Snow gathers on the upper ridges, and the trees wear frosted crowns. The temples seem even more remote, almost mythical, their lantern lights flickering in the dim, cold air. Though not as widely known as the sacred mountains of China, like Amei, Tai, or Wutai, Qingliangfeng has its own legacy of myth. Local legends tell of reclusive sages who could summon clouds with a gesture, or disappear into the forest never to return. There are tales of a dragon spirit that guards the mountain's deepest spring, said to grant visions to those who bathe their faces in its waters at dusk. Some believe the forest itself is sentient, reacting to the moods of those who enter. Wanderers who come with anger or fear, it is said, become lost. Those who walk with peace in their hearts, however, are guided gently to their destination, even if they do not know where that is. The path to Qingliangfeng's summit is not easy, nor is it marked in neon signs or concrete steps. It's a series of dirt paths, narrow wooden bridges, moss-covered stairs, and forest tunnels so thick they block out the sky. Hikers may pass by mountain huts where old tea farmers live in silence, or stumble across small stone cairns left by those who came before. From the summit, if the clouds part, one can look out over a vast stretch of misty hills and forests, a sea of green waves rolling into the horizon. There is no single view that defines Qingliangfeng. It is instead a series of shifting glimpses, layered in fog, framed by trees, fleeting and eternal all at once. Evening on the mountain is a return to quietude. The trails darken. The birds fall silent. Lanterns begin to glow in distant pavilions. And from the valleys below, the faint smells of wood smoke and boiling tea rise upward. In this dusky hour, it becomes clear, Qingliangfeng is not just a mountain, it is a sanctuary for the soul. It is a refuge from the frenetic noise of modernity, a reminder that not all wonder lies in spectacle. Sometimes, it lies in moss, in mist, in the sound of one's breath among trees that have stood for 1,000 years. In this timeless retreat, one doesn't just observe nature, one becomes part of it. To visit Qingliangfeng is to experience a rare kind of unreal beauty, one that lingers not in the eyes, but in the heart. Mount Wumeng, or Wumengshan, rises like a broken wave from the wild heart of western Guizhou. This vast and rugged range, stretching across the junction of Guizhou, Yunnan, and Sichuan provinces, remains one of the least explored yet most geologically striking mountain systems in southern China. It is a place where the earth folds in on itself, twisting into steep karst ridges, plunging into cavernous valleys, and re-emerging as wind-sculpted limestone outcrops cloaked in layers of green. It is a land of obscurity and awe, unmapped corners, nameless peaks, and trails that vanish into thickets of mist and memory. Unlike many of China's more celebrated peaks, the Wumeng Range doesn't present a singular iconic summit. Rather, it unfolds as an endless series of upland plateaus, dramatic escarpments, and fissured highlands that defy uniformity. This is karst country at its most wild and untamed. Towering limestone cliffs appear to have erupted from the earth, their jagged faces streaked with black mineral tears. Beneath them, vast sinkholes, some hundreds of meters across, swallow entire forests, while subterranean rivers carve deep into the mountain's belly, forming vast networks of caves still largely unexplored by science. Geologically, Wumengshan represents one of the southernmost expressions of the Yunnan Guizhou Plateau, where tectonic pressures have created a tortured and otherworldly landscape. Here, millions of years of uplift and erosion have left behind pinnacles, ridges, and deep ravines reminiscent of the fantastical terrain in ancient Chinese ink paintings, only more raw and immense. Fog often cloaks the upper slopes, lending the mountain a dreamlike unreality. One moment the peaks are gone, the next, they emerge, stark and solemn, like sleeping stone giants. Despite its remote nature, Wumengshan is not empty. Hidden within its folds are centuries-old Miao, Yi, and Buye villages, perched on precarious terraces or nestled into the forested basins. The people who live here have adapted their lives to the mountain's rhythms. Houses are built from local stone, roofs are thatched or tiled, and steep footpaths connect settlements that seem untouched by time. In some areas, the only sounds are the clinking of cowbells, the rustling of wind through silver grass, and the faint echo of flutes played at dusk. The cultural traditions here are just as rich as the natural surroundings. The Wumeng region is a cradle of ethnic minority folklore, where animist rituals still thrive beneath a veneer of modern life. Among the Miao communities, it's said that the mountains are sacred ancestors, living entities that watch over the people, offering both protection and punishment depending on how they are treated. Many local festivals, such as the Lusheng dance ceremonies or fire-jumping rituals, are held on windswept ridges or within secluded groves where stone altars are hidden beneath ferns. Visitors are rare, but those who are welcomed often describe an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in China, intimate, mystical, and deeply connected to the land. The biodiversity in the Wumeng Range is exceptional. Due to its altitude variation, from sun-drenched valleys to cloud-drenched summits, the range shelters an astonishing variety of plant life. Entire slopes are blanketed in azaleas that bloom in a riot of color each spring. Rhododendron forests flourish in high mountain hollows. Ferns as tall as a man grow along the riverbanks, while moss carpets ancient boulders in hues of emerald and jade. In the more remote corners, botanists have recorded dozens of rare and endemic species, some known only to this part of China. Animal life, too, is abundant but elusive. Golden pheasants flash like flames through the underbrush, and wild macaques chatter in the tree canopies. Occasionally, highland villagers report sightings of clouded leopards or black bears in the dense thickets. Birdsong is constant, shrikes, cuckoos, warblers, echoing against the cliffs like a hidden chorus. Insect life is dazzling and bizarre, from long-horned beetles the size of a thumb to moths with transparent wings. Even the air feels different here. It is heavy with the scent of loam, pine, and distant rainfall, charged with the feeling that nature is very much alive and watching. Trekking through Wumengshan is not for the faint of heart. There are no tourist buses here, no paved scenic walkways or souvenir stalls. The paths are rough and often overgrown, winding through stone gullies, bamboo thickets, and forest passes. But for those who seek immersion rather than spectacle, it is a paradise. Along the higher ridges, the world seems to drop away, revealing layer upon layer of peaks stretching to the horizon. Mist rises from unseen rivers below. Thunder rolls lazily across the valley. At night, the stars appear shockingly bright, unpolluted by artificial light. In some places, one can camp beside alpine lakes so clear they reflect the stars with perfect fidelity, or in caves once used by monks and travelers centuries ago. Perhaps one of the most captivating aspects of Wulingshan is how much of it remains unknown. While small parts of the range have been studied or settled, vast stretches remain unmapped and untouched. Some peaks are still nameless. Some valleys have never been reached by road. Caves stretch for kilometers underground, their depths echoing with water and time. Archaeologists and ecologists alike regard Wuming as one of China's last frontiers, a place where future discoveries, of fossils, of rare species, even of lost human history, are all but guaranteed. There is also a strange, magnetic beauty in Wuming's silence. Unlike more famous peaks filled with camera shutters and drone hums, Wulingshan speaks quietly. It doesn't announce its marvels. You must earn them, by walking, listening, waiting. The sun might rise and reveal a cliff you never knew was there. A trail might lead to a hidden waterfall gushing through a gorge of black stone. Or you might find yourself on a ridge at sunset, clouds burning crimson, utterly alone except for the wind and the mountains themselves. To those who venture here, Wulingshan is unforgettable. It is a place that rewires how one experiences the earth, not as a backdrop, but as a breathing, shifting, ancient being. Unreal not because of fantasy, but because such untouched reality feels like a dream. In a world ever more defined by convenience and control, Mount Wuling remains defiantly untamed, a reminder that mystery and wonder still exist for those willing to seek them. Mount Daking, known in Chinese as Daqingshan, rises quietly but profoundly along the northern edge of the Inner Mongolian Plateau, forming a natural boundary between the sweeping grasslands of the south and the more rugged, mountainous territory to the north. Unlike the towering peaks of Tibet or the myth-laden ridges of Sichuan, Daqingshan is not a place of dramatic elevation or vertical spectacle. It is a mountain range of subtle grandeur, where ancient geology meets the infinite sky, and where forests unfurl like deep green carpets amidst a sea of windblown grass. The name Daqingshan translates roughly to Great Green Mountain, and it lives up to this image in a deeply elemental way. The range stretches for hundreds of kilometers, forming a gentle arc that cradles the capital city of Hohhot to the south. The mountains here are covered in mixed forests of birch, pine, and oak, which change color with the seasons in astonishing vibrancy, from the bright greens of spring to the golden yellows and fiery reds of autumn. These forested slopes are a precious anomaly in a region otherwise defined by vast, open steppe. Geologically speaking, Daqingshan is ancient. Its granite foundations date back to the Proterozoic era, making them hundreds of millions of years old. These rocks have been weathered by wind and water into rounded ridges and rolling summits, dotted with isolated outcroppings that look like petrified waves frozen in time. There is no single summit that defines the Daking Range. Instead, it is a collection of long ridgelines and dome-like highlands, often blanketed in low-hanging clouds or veiled in the soft morning mist that drifts up from the plains below. What makes Daqingshan so unreal, so quietly astonishing, is not only its beauty, but its profound contrast. One can stand on a pine-covered hillside and look out onto the endless expanse of the Inner Mongolian grasslands, an ocean of green and gold stretching unbroken to the horizon. Here, mountains do not dominate the landscape, they coexist with it, merging into the earth rather than erupting from it. The sense of scale is vast. Wind moves over everything. The sky is enormous, full of galloping clouds and ever-shifting light. It is a place where the world feels open and the mind feels unburdened. This meeting of ecosystems, mountain forest and grassland plain, has also made Daqingshan a sanctuary for life. The region supports a surprisingly rich biodiversity, thanks to its altitude transitions and diverse habitats. Forested slopes hide wild boar, roe deer, foxes, and even lynxes in the more remote corners. Birds of prey circle high overhead, hawks, eagles, and falcons, while colorful pheasants dart between bushes. In summer, the meadows become tapestries of wildflowers, their nectar drawing swarms of butterflies and bees. Water trickles from mountain springs, feeding into clear brooks and small ponds that attract herds of grazing livestock and wild antelope. The cultural dimension of Daqingshan is equally rich. For centuries, the mountain has marked the borderland between nomadic and sedentary worlds, between the Mongols who roamed the steppe and the Han Chinese who farmed the river valleys. The range has long been considered sacred by local Mongolian communities, who see it as a living presence, a protector, a spirit, a silent witness to time. Many peaks are still believed to house mountain gods, and in remote spots, you can find ovus, shamanic stone cairns topped with blue kadag, sacred scarves, where travelers stop to make offerings or prayers before continuing on their way. Hidden among the hills are remnants of temples and meditation caves, some of which date back hundreds of years. Buddhist monks once came to these quiet mountains to practice in seclusion, drawn by the clarity of the air and the purity of the surroundings. Today, a few still remain, their simple hermitages tucked into secluded valleys where the only sound is the rustling of leaves and the distant cry of birds. In some villages, elders speak of sacred groves and healing springs, places where spirits dwell and where the land itself seems to breathe with ancient memory. For modern-day travelers, Mount Wulingyuan offers a kind of beauty that defies the traditional tropes of tourism. There are no towering cliffs or photogenic peaks to dominate the screen. Instead, its magic lies in its atmosphere, in the gentle sway of trees under wind, the way shadows stretch across the plains, the sudden appearance of a herd of wild horses galloping through the high meadows. It is a place that rewards slowness, observation, and humility. Hiking trails do exist, though many are faint and little marked. The most accessible routes begin near Hohut and wind their way into forested ravines and flower-filled glades. The terrain is moderate but rewarding, with occasional stone steps cut into steep hillsides and wooden boardwalks over marshy stretches. Camping is possible in designated areas, especially during the warmer months, and the night skies are some of the clearest in all of northern China. With minimal light pollution, the stars appear like lanterns hung across an endless vault, accompanied by the soft chorus of crickets and the distant call of owls. In winter, Qingcheng transforms again. Snow blankets the slopes in pristine white, and the forests fall silent beneath a weightless hush. Pines sag under the weight of snow, and icicles glitter on the rock faces. Streams freeze into crystal ribbons, and animal tracks crisscross the open hillsides. Despite the chill, it is perhaps the mountain at its most poetic, quiet, patient, timeless. And yet, for all its serenity, Mount Wulingyuan is not untouched. The surrounding grasslands face pressures from agriculture and grazing, and climate change is slowly altering the mountain's delicate ecosystems. Conservation efforts are ongoing, and there is growing recognition that Qingcheng is not just a regional landmark, it is a vital ecological and cultural heritage zone that deserves protection. Local governments and grassroots organizations have begun promoting ecotourism initiatives, sustainable grazing practices, and reforestation projects to ensure that the mountain's unreal beauty endures for future generations. To experience Qingcheng is to reconnect with something fundamental, an older rhythm of the world, a landscape shaped not by grandeur or spectacle but by quiet resilience and living memory. It is a place that asks nothing and gives everything, where time seems to slow, and where the pulse of nature can still be felt beneath your feet. Unreal not because it dazzles, but because it whispers, reminding us that sometimes, the most extraordinary places are the ones that ask us to be still and truly see. Mount Wulingyuan's North Ridge, a high-altitude expanse of icy spine running along the northern fringes of the Qilian mountain range in Gansu province, stands as one of the most visually surreal and geologically consequential landscapes in all of China. To behold it is to witness the very edge of worlds, where the dry, wind-blasted Gobi Desert ends and the rising spine of the Tibetan Plateau begins, and where the burning sands of Central Asia meet the chill breath of alpine snowfields. The North Ridge of Qilian, unlike the more traversed southern reaches known for their more hospitable grasslands and valleys, presents a far starker, more elemental vision of the earth. It forms an almost impassable barricade of jagged peaks, many of which remain snow-capped throughout the year, gleaming under the intense highland sun. These mountains rise with abrupt authority from arid valleys, their slate-colored flanks slicing the sky, their summits laced with permanent glacier that glint like veins of quartz. The feeling here is one of otherworldliness, like an alien terrain carved in silence over eons. Stretching across Gansu and spilling into parts of Qinghai, the Qilian mountains themselves span over 800 kilometers, but the North Ridge is particularly dramatic. The peaks here average 4,000 to 5,000 meters in elevation, and the highest, such as Gengshika Peak, though technically more central, reaches nearly 5,800 meters. However, the North Ridge is not defined by one single summit. Instead, it's a sinuous line of broken stone ridges, corrugated cliffs, and deeply incised glacial valleys that form a natural curtain between the arid Heshi corridor and the plateau beyond. The unreal quality of this place emerges not just from its remote geography, but from its duality. The region immediately north of the ridge is dry and hostile, a vast, wind-raked basin punctuated by badlands and gravel flats. But cross into the mountains, and you encounter the sublime, turquoise alpine lakes, hanging glacier draped over scree fields, and wildflower meadows flourishing in narrow valleys carved by ice. The air is thin, brittle, and almost always cold, even in summer. Here, the terrain is a painter's contradiction, icy blues and whites against ochres and umbers, frost-rimed cliffs above dry valleys cracked like broken pottery. One of the most fascinating features of the Chilean North Ridge is its role as a climatic hinge. It intercepts moisture carried by westerly winds from Central Asia, leading to localized snowfall and the formation of glacier that nourish rivers flowing east and south. These include tributaries of the Heihe River, vital for sustaining the oasis cities of the Hushi Corridor. Without this icy barrier, many of Gansu's settlements would vanish into the desert sands. In this way, Qingcheng is not merely scenic, it is life-giving. The glacier themselves are shrinking, like so many others in the age of climate change, but they remain formidable. Visitors to the region often speak of their eerie stillness, massive bodies of ancient ice with cerulean crevasses and millennia-old secrets locked within their core. Avalanches echo through the valleys at night, and in spring, meltwater tumbles down in crystal-clear torrents that feed into marshlands teeming with birdlife. Fauna in these highlands is elusive, but resilient. Snow leopards prowl the rocky outcrops, ghost-like and seldom seen. Blue sheep and Himalayan marmots navigate the steep slopes with ease. Golden eagles circle overhead, their wings catching thermals that rise from the heated stone. Yaks, both wild and domesticated, to the meadows below, their dark, hulking forms moving slowly through patches of highland grass. For those who dwell here, herders of Tibetan and Mongol heritage, these animals are not just companions, but vital lifelines in a place where survival is earned, not given. Human presence in the Chilean North Ridge is minimal but deep-rooted. Nomadic cultures have used the lower passes of these mountains for millennia, leaving behind trails, cairns, and sacred sites. Among the most compelling are the sky burial sites, platforms or rock ledges used by Tibetan Buddhists for ritual exposure of the dead to birds of prey, returning the body to nature in the ultimate act of impermanence. These sites are often nestled in the most inaccessible corners, high above the tree line, shrouded in wind and myth. The cultural lore of the mountains is equally compelling. In Tibetan cosmology, mountains are not merely geology, they are deities. And among the Chilean, it is easy to feel why. The wind howls like a living voice. Clouds gather suddenly and vanish with equal haste, revealing peaks touched by moonlight or smothered in snow squalls. The sky here is a dome of impossible depth, one moment a blazing cobalt, the next, a roiling canvas of slate and silver. Exploration of the North Ridge remains limited, both due to its remoteness and its harsh weather. There are few established tourist trails, and those that exist often require special permits, especially near border zones or military-sensitive areas. Mountaineers who attempt the higher peaks often come with local guides and supplies for weeks at a time. Yet for the few who make it, the experience is transcendent, like stepping into a forgotten chapter of Earth's formation, untouched by human hubris. In recent years, scientists have taken a growing interest in Chilean's North Ridge, not only for its glaciological data, which offers critical insights into climate patterns in East Asia, but also for its potential to preserve ancient DNA and pollen records within its ice cores. This research could help unlock climate histories going back tens of thousands of years, offering a window into a world that once was, and a warning about what is to come. Yet even amid this growing attention, the ridge remains defiantly itself. It is not a place that lends itself easily to tourism or commodification. It does not have the infrastructure of more famous ranges. No cable cars, no souvenir shops, no neatly fenced overlooks. What it offers is purity, challenge, and silence. It asks only that you come prepared, in humility, and that you accept whatever it chooses to reveal. Standing upon one of its cold summits, with wind biting your skin and clouds moving like smoke below, the idea of unreal takes on a new meaning. Here, the earth feels closer to its original state, raw, untamed, immense. The Chilean North Ridge is not a place for casual admiration. It is a place to be humbled, to be silenced, and to be reminded that some corners of the planet are still ruled not by humans, but by ice, stone, and sky. Mount Umei, one of China's 4 sacred Buddhist mountains, is globally revered for its spiritual significance, towering ridgelines, and mystical atmosphere. While most visitors are familiar with the main peak and its iconic golden summit, Jinding, it is the lesser-known sub-peaks, such as Wanfo Summit, that truly preserve the mountain's ancient soul. These sub-peaks stretch like hidden fingers through the clouds, shrouded in mists, wrapped in centuries-old forest, and scattered with lonely temples and shrines that seem to defy both gravity and time. They are not merely side trails but gateways into a quieter, more profound Amay experience, steeped in mythology, biodiversity, and a serenity that the main tourist routes often lack. Wanfo Summit, literally 10,000 Buddha's Peak, is among the most revered of these sub-peaks. Tucked away to the side of the main trail systems, it rises like a contemplative shoulder to Mount Amay's grand frame, brushing against the heavens with silent dignity. Here, towering pines lean toward each other over stone paths, birds call through the mist, and the scent of incense drifts faintly from hidden altars. Unlike the more developed main summit with its golden statues and crowds, Wanfo offers solitude and a visceral connection to the landscape, an untouched tranquility that feels both ancient and eternal. The path to Wanfo Summit and other sub-peaks like Zixianqi and Shishan Cliff is a journey through what feels like a living mandala. Winding stone steps, some carved centuries ago, thread through dense subtropical forest, past natural hot springs, hanging mosses, and crumbling stone lanterns wrapped in ferns. The biodiversity here is astonishing. Mount Amay, including its sub-peaks, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in large part because of its ecology. Over 3,000 species of vascular plants, nearly 100 species of mammals, and countless rare birds and insects inhabit these slopes. The elusive Amay Shan Lyocicla, a songbird found nowhere else on Earth, sings among the bamboo thickets. Golden monkeys sometimes swing through the higher branches. Clouds shift with the wind and light, revealing steep gorges below and distant peaks in shimmering profile. What makes the sub-peaks especially unreal is not just their natural beauty but their spiritual layering. Temples like Wanyan Temple, tucked deep into the lower sub-peaks, or the hidden Baiyun Temple perched quietly on a forest ledge, hum with a kind of invisible resonance. Many of these were founded over 1,000 years ago by Buddhist monks, who came to Mount Amay in search of enlightenment, believing the mountain to be the earthly seat of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. And indeed, the experience of walking these forgotten paths, flanked by centuries-old stupas, prayer flags fluttering from trees, and the sound of unseen monks chanting somewhere beyond the mist, feels less like a hike and more like a pilgrimage through the layers of time. The weather around Wanfo Summit and other sub-peaks plays a crucial role in the mountain's surreal character. The phenomenon of the cloud sea occurs here often, especially at dawn, when dense mists gather below the peaks, creating the illusion that the mountaintops are floating in an ocean of clouds. This same atmospheric magic gives rise to another legendary sight, the Buddha's halo or Guang, a rare optical illusion caused by the diffraction of sunlight through fog, often appearing as a glowing rainbow circle surrounding one's shadow cast onto the mist below. To the devout and the secular alike, witnessing such an event is a humbling experience, a moment where nature seems to whisper its secrets. Beyond Wanfo Summit, sub-peaks like the Nine Old Men Peak and Huayun Nunnery Ridge offer equally unreal experiences. Some of these are accessible only by long and arduous hikes, others by neglected stone staircases overgrown with moss and lichen. These lesser peaks are places where stone guardian lions lie crumbling under vines, where wooden meditation huts cling to cliffs, and where locals still leave fruit offerings at tiny roadside shrines. It is in these corners that the true Mount Amay reveals itself, not just as a sacred site on a map, but as a living entity with moods, silences, and a heartbeat that has outlasted empires. Seasonality changes everything on the sub-peaks. In spring, rhododendrons and camellias bloom in wild profusion, turning the forest paths into floral tunnels. Summer brings lush green canopies and dramatic thunderclouds that roll in like divine drums. Autumn sees the trees burst into fire colors, while winter covers the upper ridges in soft snow, wrapping the temples in a hush so profound that even footsteps seem sacred. In every season, however, the mountains retain their sense of detachment from the world below. The peaks may lie only a few hours from bustling cities like Chengdu or Leshan, but up here, time bends and memory falters. Was that sound a deer stepping on a branch, or a monk's footfall from long ago? To stand atop Wanfo Summit or one of its kin is to look out over a land both earthly and ethereal. The view is not merely one of topography, but of history and belief, a landscape layered with stories. You may see terraced fields etched into distant hillsides, fog sliding like silk through tree limbs, and below you, miles of sacred earth pulsing beneath the green canopy. The realization strikes that you are standing in a place where monks once sat in absolute silence for decades, where warriors once paused to leave a prayer before battle, and where, even today, pilgrims still climb barefoot as a gesture of devotion. Yet, for all their spiritual and aesthetic majesty, the sub-peaks of Mount Wulingyuan remain relatively unknown outside of China. Overshadowed by the drama of the main summit or the fame of other mountain ranges, they exist as a quiet testament to the idea that wonder often hides where the map fades and the crowd thins. For travelers who seek not only beauty but transformation, these hidden summits offer what few places on Earth still can: a sacred silence, a living mythology, and a path to something far beyond the physical horizon. Mount Wulingyuan and its surrounding canyon walls in Hubei province form one of China's most breathtaking, lesser-known natural spectacles. A region where colossal limestone cliffs erupt from thick, green gorges, and where the slow pulse of ancient water has carved out landscapes both surreal and sacred. Though not a single mountain in the traditional sense, Wulingyuan is a dramatic region dominated by verticality. Stone walls that tower hundreds of meters over sinuous rivers, knife-edged ridgelines wrapped in vines, and narrow sky corridors that slice through the earth like a forgotten myth. This is a place where nature feels untamed, raw, and cinematic, yet one where traces of humanity's ancient presence still linger, etched into the cliffs and folded into the winding footpaths. The centerpiece of the area is the Saidu River, or Wulingyuan, which snakes its way through narrow gorges flanked by near-vertical limestone walls that appear as though they were once ocean floor plates now violently thrust skyward. These sheer faces rise like silent cathedrals, carved by millennia of wind and rain into forms both jagged and hauntingly smooth. The river itself is tranquil in some stretches, reflecting the stone walls like a mirror, and wildly cascading in others, cutting around massive boulders in turquoise streaks of rapids and foam. This constant dialogue between water and stone gives the entire region a kinetic energy, a sense of timeless motion chiseled into permanence. Towering above this gorge system are cliffs that rival some of the world's greatest canyon landscapes. Some of the walls, including the legendary Sky Ladder Cliff and the Cloud Gate Bluff, ascend more than 1,000 feet almost vertically, their faces marked by streaks of mineral deposits and patches of hardy vegetation that cling impossibly to the rock. In the mornings, these cliffs often vanish into mist, only to re-emerge like monoliths from some lost age, hovering above the valley floor. From above, the canyons look like green veins etched into grey stone. From below, they seem like nature's great paradox, weightless yet crushing, delicate yet eternal. One of the most surreal features of the Wulingyuan Canyon region is the Wulingyuan Suspension Bridge, an engineering marvel that links two high mountain ridges above the canyon. Suspended nearly 500 meters above the river, it is among the highest bridges in the world and offers an unmatched perspective of the surrounding geology. From its span, the viewer sees layers of exposed earth strata that date back hundreds of millions of years, a vertical timeline rendered in color bands and broken ledges. The view is both beautiful and humbling, a reminder of how brief human lives are compared to the grandeur and patience of stone. But Wulingyuan does not end with natural drama. The region is also infused with cultural echoes. Centuries ago, this gorge system served as a hidden pathway for traders, pilgrims, and hermits. Crumbling stone steps still ascend certain cliff faces, some leading to abandoned temples carved directly into the rock, others to forgotten lookout stations from dynasties long past. These ancient footpaths, worn smooth by generations of travel, now weave through the forested base of the canyon and disappear into narrow gullies, swallowed by the undergrowth or hidden behind waterfall veils. Even deeper into the valley are caves whose walls bear traces of ancient ink, brushstroke graffiti from monks, hermits, and travelers who once sought refuge or revelation within the stone hollows. Legends abound in this region, including tales of a hidden Buddhist relic buried somewhere beneath the Wulingyuan cliffs, guarded by secret sects of monks who vanished centuries ago. Whether folklore or fact, these stories contribute to the canyon's uncanny atmosphere, a space not merely defined by height or depth, but by a sense of the sacred interwoven with danger and beauty. Ecologically, the Wulingyuan Canyon region is a biodiversity hotspot. The cliffs and gorges create unique microclimates that allow for a surprising variety of flora and fauna. Ferns, mosses, and orchids sprout from the cracks of shaded walls. Monkeys are sometimes seen scrambling up vertical ledges or swinging from branches high above the river. Bird calls echo constantly between the cliffs, and at night, The forest vibrates with the calls of frogs, cicadas, and unseen nocturnal creatures. The remoteness of the area has allowed many rare species to survive, including the elusive Chinese giant salamander and endemic forest birds rarely seen elsewhere in Hubei. Visiting Mount Siduhe and its canyon walls is no casual affair. There are areas that remain virtually inaccessible except to the most determined hikers and climbers. Steep paths require ropes or ladders, sudden weather changes can turn dry trails into slick death traps, and the remoteness ensures that cell service is patchy at best. But those who brave the journey are rewarded with a profound experience. There are few places in the world where you can stand beneath a wall of limestone taller than a skyscraper, surrounded by silence, mist, and the distant roar of water, and feel, undeniably, that you are a guest in a realm beyond the ordinary. Each bend in the river unveils a new world, a waterfall pouring from a hidden cleft, a rock face glowing golden in the late sun, or a forgotten temple gate overtaken by forest. Here, the unreal becomes reality. The canyons are neither tamed nor tameable, and their power lies not only in their staggering scale, but in their refusal to yield to modernity. They remain as they have for ages, silent guardians of ancient stories, stone witnesses to time itself, and among the planet's most otherworldly landscapes. Mount Luojiao, or Luojiashan, emerges gently yet spiritually from the misty coastline of Zhejiang province, rising like a lotus from the sea, its slopes wrapped in a quiet reverence that has persisted for centuries. Nestled near the eastern edge of China, just off the shores of Putuo Island, this mountain holds not just natural beauty but profound Buddhist significance. It is believed by many adherents to be the Bodhima, spiritual dwelling, of Avalokitesvara, Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, making Luojiao one of the holiest places in East Asian Buddhism. Here, the unreal becomes reality through the blending of sea and sky, stone and spirit, myth and mist. Unlike the more dramatic inland mountains marked by jagged peaks and alpine extremes, Mount Luojiao presents its magnificence through subtle, flowing forms. The mountain itself is not towering in scale, its elevation modest compared to China's inland giants, but its slopes unfold like sacred scrolls, draped in thick, subtropical forest, punctuated with bamboo groves, camphor trees, and ancient pine. The sea winds blow cool and salt-heavy, while a persistent veil of fog and sea mist often coats the landscape in a surreal haze, especially in early mornings. This moist atmosphere helps sustain a rich ecology, but also contributes to Luojiao's dreamlike aura. Stone stairways fading into white mist, temples barely visible through drifting fog, bell chimes echoing in unseen hollows. For devout pilgrims, the journey to Mount Luojiao begins with a boat ride from mainland Zhejiang to Putuo, one of China's 4 sacred Buddhist mountains. From there, pilgrims often embark on a symbolic ferry crossing to the tiny, isolated islet of Luojiao itself. According to legend, the island only appears during low tide, when the sea parts to reveal a submerged sandbar connecting Putuo to Luojiao. For centuries, this phenomenon was interpreted as a spiritual test. Only the faithful could cross. In more practical terms, visitors today time their crossing with the tides, either walking the revealed sand pathway barefoot or taking small boats when the tide swells. Regardless of the method, the arrival feels ceremonial, a crossing from the earthly world into something timeless. Upon setting foot on Luojiao Island, the feeling of entering a sacred space becomes immediately palpable. The soundscape shifts dramatically, the distant roar of the sea becomes muffled, absorbed by dense woods. Birdsong replaces human chatter, and the winding trails ahead climb steadily but gracefully, flanked by trees that seem to bow over the path. Incense drifts from unseen shrines. Offerings of fruit and coins rest in stone niches carved into the hillside. It is a landscape layered in devotion, quiet, secluded, and saturated in legend. The primary temple on the mountain, Luojiao Guanyin Temple, is modest in size but immense in spiritual resonance. Built in traditional Chinese architectural style, its eaves curl like the edges of a lotus petal, and the halls are filled with statues of Guanyin in her many forms, standing on a lotus, riding a dragon, seated in silent meditation. Candles flicker in the dark interior, casting warm light on gold-leafed icons and ancient calligraphy. Pilgrims kneel in the temple courtyard facing eastward, toward the infinite ocean, symbolic of Guanyin's all-seeing compassion, and offer prayers for healing, wisdom, and safe passage. Not far from the temple, a lesser-known trail curls around the island's southern cliffs, giving visitors panoramic views of the sea crashing against the rocks below. These cliffs, streaked with salt and thyme, have inspired countless Buddhist poems and prayers, their wild beauty reinforcing the sense of standing at a threshold between worlds. During stormy weather, the waves erupt upward like fountains of energy, spraying mist across the path and drenching mossy rocks. This is not a place of passive reflection alone, but of elemental dialogue between faith and nature, the sea and the spirit. Mount Wulingyuan is also steeped in stories passed down orally over generations. One of the most famous legends tells of how Guanyin, in her earthly manifestation as a princess, came to meditate on this very mountain after rejecting a life of wealth and privilege. According to this tale, she stood at the cliff's edge and vowed to remain until she had witnessed the suffering of all beings, a pledge that transformed her into the bodhisattva of infinite compassion. Another story speaks of monks who once lived in caves scattered along the island, devoting their lives to quiet meditation and spiritual purity. Some of these hermit caves still exist today, overgrown with vines but marked by faint inscriptions, dates, sutras, names long forgotten. Beyond its religious and historical richness, Mount Wulingyuan also offers an immersive ecological experience. The forests are alive with birds and insects, their calls forming a natural hymn to complement the spiritual chants heard at the temples. In spring, wildflowers bloom along the paths, and small creeks gurgle down the slopes. In summer, the humidity turns the air thick, as though the very mountain breathes with the visitor. In autumn, falling leaves litter the mossy stone stairways, while winter sometimes coats the upper ridges with dewfrost, turning the island into a crystal sanctuary shrouded in fog. Perhaps most extraordinary is the way Mount Wulingyuan resists the touch of modernity. Despite being accessible by ferry and within reach of populous regions, the island remains quiet and untouched by urban encroachment. There are no large resorts, no roaring tour buses, no neon signs. Electricity is minimal. The quiet is profound, the serenity enveloping. Visitors who climb its paths often do so in contemplative silence, their footsteps absorbed by soft soil and ancient stone. Here, even time seems to move differently, slower, gentler, and with a sense of purpose. In many ways, Mount Wulingyuan is more than a geographical feature. It is a convergence point, where ocean meets sky, where belief meets landscape, where the human soul meets something eternal. It is an unreal place not because it defies reality, but because it elevates it, reminding all who visit that the most sacred spaces are often those where nature and spirit blend indistinguishably. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and like the video.